Good evening and welcome to Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin. We are broadcasting from the gun store here in Las Vegas. Some of you are hearing us on KSHP 1400 AM. We are broadcasting simultaneously on YouTube at Fired Up with Bob Irwin. If you go to YouTube, you'll get a visual of the same show. Tonight's guest for the show is firearm instructor and terrorism expert Lenny Davis. Lenny has been on the show several times before discussing firearms issues and several times discussing issues of terrorism and obviously what is going on at the moment. I have this wonderful outline of shooting cases and things that's probably going to sit on the table here till next week. As you all know, we've had a serious terrorist attack. Let me first introduce, here is Lenny Davis. Again, if you would give a little bit of your background for listeners.
Sure, Bob. Bob said my name's Lenny Davis. I'm a retired special agent of the Department of Homeland Security. I've spent the last 8 years as a contract instructor for the U.S. State Department in the Global Anti-Terrorism Assistance Program as a subject matter expert in terrorism. And now I work for Techstratics International, and I am their Director of Investigations and Training Facilities.
Lenny has a tremendous background in this, been all over the Middle East, and is quite familiar with the threat. So I'm going to talk to you this evening about some of the gun laws that they're attempting to put in, apparently unrelated to, it's just an excuse. Wow, now we can try and outlaw guns again. Anyway, I want to first let Lenny address everybody for a little bit on his overall view of what happened and what's the reaction to it and what he knows as an insider. Probably a bad.
Yeah, I don't know anything reference the case per se, really anything other than
how they operate.
How they operate. This guy's branded as what they call a lone wolf, and they came up with this term several years ago because there were these guys that seemed to be not connected with anybody. Probably the most famous one was Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. You know, he had his own grief, and his own grievances in his mind, and he killed several people with bombs. So that's kind of where the lone wolf thing came. Where it comes into terrorism, the traditional model of terrorism is it's a cell of 5 or 6 people, and they're controlled by someone overseas. Very, very similar to what happened during 9/11. Osama bin Laden and Al Qaeda were controlling these cells of terrorists in the United States, and they pulled off 9/11. Since then, there's been several of these. They've gotten smarter, is what it is. The administration I see, the first thing I see the administration almost every day is someone in the administration saying they've not yet found any direct connection between this shooter in Miami and overseas someone Al Qaeda or somewhere like that. Right. They kind of got away from that. Al Qaeda's been, I think it was 2003 or 2004 in Iraq. And if you've seen me on the show before and we talked about terrorism, I've mentioned this before. In Iraq, our special forces raided an Al Qaeda stronghold. They found basically a manual, a training manual. And Al Qaeda has, for well over a decade now, got into the saying, they'll still try and do massive attacks like 9/11, but they're also, encouraging their followers to do it themselves where they're at without ever, with whatever means necessary, whether it's a bomb, a gun, a knife. One of the things you're seeing in Israel in the last few months, you've seen it here in Merced, I believe it's Merced, California, at a school. A young jihadi took a knife and was stabbing people. They said, oh, that was just some crazy college kid, but it's now been confirmed that the kid was a as they say, self-radicalized jihadi, and he was carrying it out. It goes on. I saw another one happen last week in Israel. People came up. I think today or yesterday in England, there was a person killed, and I haven't heard she was a member of parliament.
Right.
I haven't heard the details whether it is that, but it has the makings of a jihadi attack. Now, I don't know if that's the case in that. In Orlando, this is a classic case of these guys. Al-Qaeda has a website. Al-Qaeda puts out a magazine. There's 1 million of these jihadi websites on the internet. You people that are watching me on YouTube, there are people here in the United States, watching jihadi or looking at jihadi websites, and these things have training and how-to and everything else. You don't need to go in the old model of you need to go to Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, any of these places and get trained and then come back is really kind of a dead model. The attacks in Paris, we talked about that. Those guys were all refugees. They all came to Europe and Western Europe, both Paris and Belgium. Where they have some of the strongest gun laws in the world. Yeah. And they have made those attacks with bombs and AK-47s that they got their hands on. This guy here in the United States, he was an American citizen. He was, as they say, a self-radicalized jihadi. But make no doubt about it, this was a terrorist attack by ISIS, ISIL, Al-Qaeda. ISIS is taking credit for it because he called, I guess during the shooting, he stopped at one point, called 911, and on a taped phone call made it,
right.
Said pledged his allegiance to ISIS. So this was an attack that was as cold and calculating as Paris, cold and calculating as 9/11. It was just not done necessarily with a direct connection to Al-Qaeda. He wasn't being directed to do this. He's made the determination on his own to do it.
Yeah, we get all these reports immediately when things happen, and there's, as everybody knows from looking at these in the past, there's mistakes that go out, assumptions that go out. There was a story for a while that he'd made 2 trips to Syria.
Yeah.
This guy, that may or may not be true. They all switch names and this and that when they're traveling and go in and out clandestinely. And from the gun perspective, we've had a lot of news media in here wanting this or that about AR-15 machine guns and so forth, and it wasn't even actually an AR-15 that the guy was carrying. It turns out now, the groups jump on this. The media unfortunately reads the other media page and adds something to it, and very little of it turns out to be fact. Now, the head of the FBI, has made some statements about it now, that it apparently he was a self-radicalized jihadi. The guns, apparently, the assault rifle and a Glock pistol were bought legally,
right?
And we have the complaint now in Congress. I'm getting ahead of myself in the outline here, but to do restrictive gun laws to theoretically prevent future attacks. From your perspective as an enforcement agent, does that work?
No.
You've been on that side of it, trying to stop gun smuggling and things, when he was with Customs before. And I know you've helped interdict arms shipments and so forth. Are those arms shipments a factor in crime in the United States? the theory seems to be from administration, because you have a gun, you commit a crime.
Right.
Let me give everybody a little bit of background. I've been hit with the media pretty good in the last 2 days. Pretty good doesn't begin to cover it, actually. Without going into the stations they were on, reporters that I have worked with past that generally seem, at least their organizations seem to be level-headed to some degree. A young man came in from one station and wanted to film a interview about what happens and this and that. But the immediate thing you want to know is, were more gay people buying guns or signing up for concealed weapon classes? And I couldn't make that up. As stupid as that sounds, that's what he asked. And I calmly explained to him, we don't have a thing on the federal form. We ask if you're Spanish or Moroccan or Mexican or Asian or whatever, but we don't ask you if you're gay when you go to buy a gun. It isn't a criteria. And I told him very seriously, we don't clock that. We sell guns for self-defense, and I don't really care even about what race the guy is. The customers are buying guns to defend themselves, and we don't ask their religion, we don't ask their gender bias, whatever. And he was actually kind of offended because it didn't fit into his story.
Right.
And ultimately did a story that was on that had about 7 or 8 seconds of me talking about concealed carry classes, and the other part of the other 4 minutes was on a guy who is teaching concealed weapon for gays, and the class is free, somewhat like the one here at the gun store. But you don't have to be gay to take his class, he said. But you don't have to be straight to take the class at the gun store either. So I guess it works out. Anyway, his whole object of this news was that gay people were buying guns in order to defend themselves from this attack he perceives as being an anti-gay attack rather than an anti-American attack. Everything now in the media seems to be based on race and religion, and if that's all they want to know about, that story was the interview was horrible. Then I had another one from another channel that came in that wanted to buy an assault rifle, and the idea was, to me, what she said was she wanted to see, what the paperwork was and all the background checks. That wasn't it. The story was how fast you can go into a store and buy an assault weapon. So when she did the story, she cut out the part where she was filling out the paperwork and doing the background check, and she got her background check from the ATF nationally, from the FBI, and she got a background check from the state of Nevada. But on the program, when she broadcast it, she left that part out. She said she went in less than 15 minutes. She went to the gun store and bought an assault weapon and was out the door in less than 15 minutes with just her Nevada driver's license and paying the gun. And fortunately, the station that ran it, the news moderator, she's over here on the desk telling me about how she bought this gun, and just all she needs is a Nevada driver's license and cash, and she got it. One of the moderators, the actual news people, said, and you got your background check, and she just went right on. She didn't respond to that. Of course, she got a background check. She was screened by the FBI in the criminal history repository in California, which says III for the Western United States and so forth. And she had no criminal history. She said that. But then she used herself as the example of, nobody even checked. I could buy a gun in 15 minutes. And it simply was misleading crap. And those stations, both, particularly the second one, really bothers me, because I worked with them for about 30 years and didn't expect to be ambushed like that. I'm not going to name the station because I'm certainly believe they didn't intend that. That was a reporter with an agenda when she came in the door. I should have known because she came in the door and she said, I even clocked it. When I drove from the station, it took me 12 minutes to get here. And now it took me 15 minutes and I was out the door. She was actually here about an hour and a half. So parts of it she didn't count as mostly the background check.
This is a typical thing that gets most people about the media. They're not reporting the news. They're reporting. They're trying to use their mass media for their own.
This was an agenda piece.
Agenda piece.
I'm coming in
it totally
to
was.
show
And whoever
how easy it is for a criminal to get a gun, but she's not a criminal and she passed the background check, so she leaves the background check out of the story. So
the thing that gets me, folks, is here's the bottom line. And I saw that piece, Bob, and you were absolutely ambushed. It was one of the worst pieces of shoddy journalism I've seen, but I've seen it all the way from Katie Couric on down to local deals. Let's modify it. It doesn't fit our agenda. The truth doesn't fit our agenda, so let's do that. It's pretty much what and the thing that kind of burns me up is I see our current administration saying, well, this guy was just a lone wolf and he doesn't have we haven't been able to find a connection to someone overseas at a terrorist group. They don't have phones directly to him and the head of Al Qaeda or the head of ISIS. They're not going to. We've known for years that these guys are not doing that. This is a new thing. It's happened already once this year in San Bernardino, California. Those people were self-radicalized. They did this on their own. They took the whole operation under their own, which is what Al Qaeda doctrine and ISIS doctrine is right now. They want you to attack at home. They don't want you to make the trip to fight in the caliphate in Iraq and get caught.
Yeah.
Which they realize that they're doing that. They'd rather have you attack and where you're at and with what you have. Now, you asked me earlier about what I thought about the enforcement with new gun regulations, if it will affect terrorism. I happen to believe, unlike a certain person who is running for president, who shall remain nameless, but she
not for long. She won't.
She made a statement, I believe, yesterday, saying that she needed to get a gun ban, and because it's not going to stop them all, but if it even stops one, it's so good. Well, I got news for you. It's not going to stop any. We had an assault weapons ban in 1994 to 2004 under that nameless person's husband's presidency. The Department of Justice did and the GAO post when the ban expired. It expired after 10 years. They did a study whether or not the gun ban reduced crime, reduced active shooters, reduced any of this. It was found to have absolutely negligible effect. None. Zero. And I don't think there's they say there are approximately 350 million guns in the United States. Here's the bottom line. Let's just say magically, if I'm a terrorist, okay, and magically you take all the private guns that are in everybody's possession and you can magically remove them, which you will never be able to do. So you magically remove all the guns. Civilian people no longer have a gun. Only the police and the military. I want to do a terrorist attack.
Where are you going to go?
Where am I going to go? I'm going to maybe do something like get a couple of my jihadi friends with me, and we're going to call up on us in a sleepy little town or Las Vegas Metro or Henderson or North Las Vegas or the Highway Patrol, make a crime report, request assistance. An officer's going to show up. He's going to expecting to see one person. He's going to get attacked by multiple people, and they're going to take their guns. Just like in 2014, when that scumbag husband and wife assassinated 2 Las Vegas Metropolitan police officers. They were dead on the floor of the restaurant, and they took their guns. If I can't get a gun, I'm going to do a knife, or I'm going to use something else. Folks, you cannot stop this by gun-free zones, banning the only way you have to protect yourself. Now, I'm about as I kind of look at myself as pretty much middle of the road in the gun debate. I believe that yes, it should be your right to own anything that you want to a certain extent. I do believe there are some people who probably shouldn't have machine guns and those kind of things.
And then the limit on personal nuclear weapons.
Yeah, limit on personal nuclear weapons, those kind of things. Of course, there's going to be some people that are going to get after me going, oh, you're after our rights. It should be our right to own anything we want. Now, there's got to have some reasonableness to it. An AR-15, a semi-automatic, if you want to use the wrong term, assault rifle. AR does not stand for assault rifle. It stands for Armalite rifle, the company that designed it and patented it in 1950s. It does not mean assault rifle. That is something the media has put out. The AK-47 is this, the other standard throughout the world, assault weapon, if you will. They are magazine-fed, semi-automatic weapons.
And also first issued in 1947,
right,
which is where the number comes from.
Exactly.
They're old stuff. I mean, as regular listeners know, I subscribe to a lot of left-wing websites to get the opinion of what they're doing. To address our current shooter, the Senate Homeland Security Chairman Ron Johnson said immediately after, 4 hours after the initial rampage, this 29-year-old radicalized Muslim broadcast his twisted message of hate on social media, his Facebook pledge loyalty to ISIS, and threatened more attacks on the civilized world. He said, I pledge my allegiance to ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. May Allah accept me. Real Muslims will never accept the filthy ways of the West. You kill innocent women and children by airstrikes. Now taste the Islamic State vengeance. He used his Facebook page before and during the attack to post terrorists where they'd come. He said, I pledge my allegiance to ISIS. And I just watched national media with presidential candidates saying they're not really sure that this was an attack against gays rather than Americans. Now, and touching on what this is a website called New America, which is highlights ethnic media problems. It's a racist website for not whites. It's the only way to say that. Anyway, they go on and about this Afghan American for months before the attack. He was investigated by the FBI a couple times. Nevertheless, he was able to purchase a cache of weapons, including an AR-15. He did not purchase an AR-15. The assault rifle carried by members of the U.S. military. No, they don't. They carry a different version. Then he said, it says military-grade AR-15s fire 800 rounds per minute, as much as 13 rounds per second, which isn't the gun he had. The semi-automatic version carried by him and other perpetrators of mass shootings have a magazine capacity of 30 rounds and can fire bullets as fast as one can pull the trigger. And they say assault-style weapons like the AR-15 have but one purpose, which is to kill en masse. They have no place on America's streets. Americans tend to buy, American males particularly, the same kind of gun they had when they were in the Army. And the guys that were World War too early, and whatever, still buy bolt action rifles because they have those. The Korean vintage guys buy M1 Garands and M1 carbines. And everybody since then that was trained on AR-15, M16 series, they buy those guns and they keep those guns because that's the gun they know how to work, and they had it in the Army and so forth and so on. That's why they're popular, not because they're better for killing people in mass. Nobody's ever come in here and bought one of those. I had one of those when I was in Fallujah, and I want to get one of these. Da, 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 da. They don't say I had one of those, and I understand they'll kill civilians in mass, so that's why I want one of those. This website decided their data shows up to 1 million AR-15s are purchased every year by U.S. civilians. I have no idea where they got that number, but we'll take it at face value. This guy bought a similar one in Florida. I'm to believe that 1 million other people in that same year bought an AR-15, and apparently they didn't shoot anybody. Anyway, their estimates put the number of assault-style weapons now in circulation in the United States as high as 8 million. So if that's really true, that argument is against having military-style rifles, but it's the reverse. It proves that 8 million people have them already, and one of them shot a bunch of people in Orlando. Wrong. And they say in their own letter here, well, an assault weapons ban will not prevent future tragedies. I'm going to repeat that again. While an assault weapon ban will not prevent future tragedies. That's what we're saying. And while it will not address daily violence that is a tragic hallmark for many Americans, it will help turn the tide of bloody mass shootings. And then they're so brilliant, they say, where we have such bans already exist in California and several other states. The lack of similar bans in neighboring states undermines efforts to curb violence. Excuse me, but I believe we had a mass shooting with an AR in California.
2 ARs.
And it says such bans already exist. So that would prevent, but that's where we've had several of them.
Oh yeah, he bought those. They bought the guns in California from a legal gun.
But their logic is because they have the ban in California, this kind of thing won't happen there.
I addressed this the other day. Someone asked me about it and said, "Well, you're not banning the guns in Nevada. You can buy them." I said, "Yes, legally you can buy them as a citizen of Nevada, resident of Nevada, and you pass a background check. You can buy them privately owned. If you take it to California, you are committing a felony."
Yes.
And the whole thing is, in fact, many years ago, a young man came into the gun store, still had his Nevada driver's license, but actually was a resident of Fiji. And he took the guns and he purchased them here, did all the paperwork as he was supposed to, if he'd have been truly a Nevada resident. So he lied on the form. He took them to California and was in the process of putting them in a crate and put them in a crate and was going to have them flown back to Fiji. Well, the U.S. Customs inspectors in Los Angeles opened the crate as an inspection on an outbound, found the 4 AR-15s, arrested him. The U.S. prosecutor in L.A. declined to prosecute the case because California, the DA in California was going to prosecute him, and he could have gotten about up to 10 years in the federal system, depending on how. This guy got like 15 years in the state of California penitentiary for bringing assault weapons into the state of California illegally, unregistered assault weapons. So when they're criminals. Criminals are going to violate the law. The San Bernardino was a perfect case. They had the brother-in-law. He ended up buying these guns for him, basically doing a straw purchase. He said they were his guns when in reality he was giving them to his brother-in-law. And so at the end of the day, he committed a crime which he is facing charges on. So yeah, there's a ton of laws, and this is the thing that really upsets me. They want to pass more laws. They want to ban all these guns. If they'd enforce the laws that are on the books, they, when police catch them, if the prosecutors would prosecute. My biggest beef was in 2014. I read a statistic from the Justice Department that there were 77,000 cases of straw man purchases reported to the Department of Justice through the agencies, law enforcement agencies, federal, state, and local. Out of those 77,000 cases, less than 7,000 of those were prosecuted federally. Many of those, nobody did any time behind. They never went to prison for straw man purchase. But there's 77,000 cases in 2014 of people breaking gun laws. When those guys get taken down, they should go to prison forever. Don't get mad and don't go after some guy who wants to have, as I do, have an AR-15. I've actually more than one, and my daughter has one, and my girlfriend has one, and a lot of my family members have them because they're very handy, light rifles for self-protection.
Did you buy any of them this past year to make you one of the million?
I actually did not. The last one I bought was last year.
You're one of the 8 million.
Yeah, I'm one of the 8 million people that have them.
Let me address another thing. NBC News came up with this when they were doing research on what they call the no-fly, no-buy. If you're on the watch list but you can't fly, you should not be able to buy a gun. This is the thing they're pushing through Congress as we speak. And it's interesting, but many experts say, this is from NBC News, says it's been endorsed by President Barack Obama and congressional Democrats, and maybe Donald Trump will agree with that too, it says. He's talking to the NRA, I guess, tomorrow. But many experts question, this is NBC, not exactly a right-wing hotbed, but many experts question the so-called no-fly, no-buy approach would be effective, noting that it would have not prevented several of the most grisly recent mass shootings in Orlando, Florida, San Bernardino, California, and Sandy Hook, etc. And here's the reason. None of the attackers in those mass shootings were among the 1.1 million people on the government's database of suspected terrorists, including those with extremist ties that banned them from flying. So none of these cases would have been affected by the no-fly, no-buy. Zero, according to NBC News, yet we're pushing that for, it hasn't come up yet. The equivalent of arresting everybody for drunk driving because somebody drunk drives and they already had a conviction, weren't legally allowed to buy a car. And here is something else that's dear to my heart. This was run on one of the websites I actually write for, ammoland.com, by one of their executives. First, they want you to understand that the odds of you getting caught in a domestic terror attack are pretty small. Doesn't happen very often. When it does happen, it's really bad, and there'll probably be more. We'll address that in a bit. But terrorism is already here, unless you work at the New York Times, you already know that we have terrorists here locally in the United States, and the New York Times doesn't seem to understand that. Yes, they expect more attacks like the recent ones. Our enemies, ISIS and radical Muslim jihadists, are persistent, and we have no reason to believe they'll discontinue. That's our next subject, actually, honey. The bottom line, is there anything wrong with observing reality and taking prudent measures to increase the odds of successfully protecting your family? Of course not. What the arguments say is a concealed weapon holder cannot have any meaningful impact on a terrorist attack, and that is absolutely wrong. The anti-self-defense media will say, come on, a concealed carrier isn't going to be able to stop a terrorist attack. That's not true. Virtually all terrorist attacks take place in gun-free zones. Almost all of them. There's a few that were questionable, but all of the ones we're talking about were gun-free zones. If you're going to go shoot up a bunch of people, where are you going to do it? You're going to do it where nobody's carrying a gun. So when you see the sign on the building or the stadium or whatever that says, no guns allowed, don't go there, because that's where the terrorist is going to go for their attack. They know that when they break in and start shooting, they'll be unopposed for 10 minutes or maybe 20 minutes. So you have these people kneeling and praying with their hands up, waiting their turn to be killed. Now, there's no scenario in your life that could be worse than that, being caught there. But if a concealed carrier is in that crowd and he knows he's going to be killed anyway, so you take your little pistol, which is only a 9mm against an AR-15 or whatever the guy's carrying around, and you shoot the guy as much as you possibly can. He may shoot you back. You're going to die anyway. But look at all the people you will save who can now escape because you distracted the guy, you busted up his timing, he didn't plan to get shot, he thought he had free reign. It's as simple as that. The people on the airliner that crashed that was headed for the White House were all aware of what they did and saved God knows how many people from dying. And Americans do that. If you find yourself in a terrorist situation, you shoot the guy. He's going to kill you anyway. You might as well save the other people, and you will disrupt the attack. If you get lucky, you might even kill the guy and he won't shoot anybody else. But he will certainly allow others to escape. So advice is, hurt the terrorists as much as you can. We're training people now. A whole bunch of people just go grab the guy and everybody slap him and kick him and knock him senseless. Well, if somebody's got a gun, I don't care. You got a .22. You shoot him a couple times with it or shoot at him. It's going to disrupt what he's doing and give other people a chance to jump him or to escape. You know, if you're dealing with a terrorist where everybody's lined up to be killed anyway, do that. Save your fellow Americans. If you're going to die, die resisting. That's the end of my speech about that.
And let me just add a little something to that. I think it was 4 years ago in Portland, Oregon, at the Clackamas Center Mall, a mall I was at this last weekend just before my daughter's wedding. One I had been there multiple times. A young man walked in there with an assault rifle of some variety, a semi-automatic rifle. He killed 2 people. There was a young man who was a concealed weapons carrier and holder. He was there. He drew his weapon, pointed at this individual. He couldn't, the concealed weapons permit holder didn't fire because there were too many people in his line of fire. But the shooter saw him about to shoot him, and he committed suicide. This is a phenomenon with these guys, whether they're a terrorist, whether they're just some whacked out active shooter, jerk, idiot, psychopath. They don't expect, they want to die on their own terms. They want to take a lot of people with them and then probably be killed by the police, or they want to go out on their own terms. They don't want to be taken out by somebody that's disrupting them. And this guy, the shooter, looked at him and saw that he was going to try to shoot him, and he stopped his attack and he shot himself. He took himself out of it. There was a Clackamas County Sheriff's Department substation in that mall. It took the responding deputy just about a minute to get there. The first one got on the scene. This guy had been dead for over 30 seconds because this young man jumped up there with a handgun. One of the things that I've preached for a long time, and it's my understanding, and I don't know for sure, but it's my understanding there was an armed uniformed security officer at the door of this club in Orlando. He was one of the first people killed. Why? Because he was a visible threat and he didn't see it coming. I have told a lot, I train a lot of professionals, security professionals. I do some consulting, and I try to tell people that in these sort of gun-free soft targets, have armed security, have them in plain clothes, have them not overtly in the, and I see seems to be with a lot of security companies now, uniform security companies, it's that bright electric green, orange safety, you know, vest
security
color.
on the back. It says shoot
Yeah.
me first.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And those are the guys who are they're going to be the first people I'm going to take out. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to, and he did. And this is the other chilling thing, folks, that you got to wake up and understand and listen. He did a recon of Disney World. He did a recon. He had been in this club multiple times. He's done his homework. He knew there was an armed guard there, but only a uniformed armed guard. He took him out, and he went to work on unarmed civilians. Why? Because it was a gun-free zone. I don't go to places that say I can't carry my gun unless I absolutely have to. A federal building, a post office, those kind of things. I don't go there. Why? Because I do not want to give up my ability to defend myself. End of story. And you can...
Yeah, it's the same reason we discourage for civilians open carry.
Yeah.
If you can carry concealed, carry concealed. It's always better to surprise your opponent, particularly in a terrorist case, obviously, because otherwise he's going to surprise you. A couple of other things. I want to talk a little bit we've got about 9 minutes left. We've got a lot of gun laws now headed down the pike. The administration is pushing, as you've seen, we have Democratic congressmen that are filibustering and so forth, and want to get a vote on an assault weapon ban in the United States. If that happens, we gave you the numbers. There's 8 million, quote, assault weapons, depending on how these left-wing guys define an assault weapon, in the United States in private hands. They didn't shoot anybody in Orlando. But the government is apparently advocating outlawing those and any magazines that hold more than 10 shots, and. There's a whole series of things coming down the pike. Hopefully that will be defeated, and hopefully then our president will not decide that executive orders are appropriate. I can't even predict what will happen if the president decides he's going to go around and pick up everybody's guns. We'll see a minor version of it here shortly. California is about to have another assault weapon ban and outlaw already existing grandfathered magazines. The grandfathered magazines you have, there's a bill in the Senate headed for the governor apparently shortly that will ungrandfather all those magazines and bullet button guns and all that sort of stuff. And all rifles and pistols will hold 10 shots, rifles anyway, only, and you load them from the top so you can't change the magazine. That's still up in the air. If you are a resident of California looking at this, you want to get involved with the firearmpolicy.org group, the Firearm Policy Coalition, it's called, firearmpolicy.org. They keep up on all the California laws. They've got a whole lot of stuff on it, but you guys are headed, boy, in a bad place right now. But it'll probably prevent crimes. That's why the San Bernardino shooting didn't take place, because they had a ban on those types of guns. A couple weeks, we've got the Las Vegas Gun Show, July 16th and 17th at the Sports Center up the road from us here. Next week, we have murder defense attorney Clark Patrick on again. I really want to get him on because we're going to talk about the constitutional issues that have to do with the bans that are currently working their way through Congress, and they'll be about at their peak a week from today. And we will discover what they're doing. And there's a story I got to do.
9 minutes.
9 minutes. Good. These are going to be on next week, but this one is just so cool. I have to do it now because I'm just excited about it. As you know, we do lady self-defense classes today here, and we've got another one coming up in a couple weeks, 23rd, I believe. If you want to sign up for lady self-defense class, it's on the 23rd. Go to thegunstorelasvegas.com. Our concealed weapon classes, which we get into, are free. And again, thegunstorelasvegas.com, you can sign up for those. This is from the Bristol Herald Courier in Gainesville, Florida. I just love this story. Police say a homeless woman was defending herself when she fatally shot a man at a homeless camp in Gainesville. Police report a woman called 911 Thursday evening. The dispatcher heard her yelling, "Get off of me," before the line disconnected. When the dispatcher called back, police say the woman answered and said she'd shot someone. Police did not identify the 58-year-old woman because she's a domestic violence victim. Responding officers say they found her covered in blood with a gun in her purse. At the campsite, police say they discovered a 41-year-old male with a fatal gunshot wound to the chest. Police say the woman's injuries were defensive, and based on her statement and the witness interviews, they believe she was acting in self-defense. He goes to attack a woman at a homeless camp, and she's packing and shoots him.
Oh boy.
Surprise! The most helpless looking victim. And again, you know, I've talked about this on other shows when we talk about cases. She called 911, and the tape to the 911 operator hears her saying, "Get off of me," literally, and provided a non-biased witness to the sequence of event. They hear the warnings, they hear the gunshots. Hopefully this woman will be able to find, with the publicity of this, we'll be able to find somebody to help her get life back on track so she's not homeless. I'm reading this case, and this jerk jumps on her trying to sexually assault her. And you've got to imagine at the moment he saw the gun come up or felt the gun blast, what went through his mind, like, this can't be real.
Very bad career decision.
We've got
what happened.
We've got a woman in a homeless camp that's packing a gun and defended herself. I love this class. June 23rd, we got a lady self-defense class coming up. You can sign up on our website for that. But I couldn't hold on to this story
that's great.
For another week.
If I can bring up one thing, China, to go back
Sure.
just a second about the gun ban, the assault rifle ban. My daughter called me about 20 minutes before I came on the show, and she was mad. And she said, "Dad, I just got my Progressive insurance bill, and in that email from Progressive was a sign the gun ban, the assault weapons ban, that Congress has blood on their hands, and Congress needs to get instate a gun ban immediately, assault weapons ban immediately." Well, when I informed my daughter that Progressive Insurance is owned by a gentleman who is a very anti-gun individual and has literally donated millions of dollars to the ban of firearms, my daughter's response made her father warm the cockles of my heart, because she says, "Well, I'm going to get me a new insurance company." And I would highly recommend to anybody. I've never had Progressive Insurance. Flo makes a great pitch woman. But when I found out that the background of the owner, and he's very much an anti-gun, which is his right. It's his right. He's just not going to do it with any of my money. And as of about a half hour, 45 minutes ago, he lost a customer in Oregon. My daughter will be looking for a new insurance company. I highly recommend, if you have guns, if you decide that you want to keep your guns and your gun rights, and you have Progressive Insurance, maybe you should look for another insurance company.
You know, to defend guns, those types of things actually work. I mean, you have watched, those of you on the conservative side and the Christian side have watched Target's stock drop. And because they would not, you know, they want everybody using everybody's bathroom and that sort of thing. And, you know, that's fine. If they want to do it in their stores, that's fine. If you choose not to shop there because you can't let your 12-year-old daughter go to the restroom by herself because there may be a guy in there. Target says it's not a problem and everybody should be equal and and we shouldn't discriminate. Having private bathrooms to me is not discrimination. That's just common sense. And I think the predators are going to be out. Maybe not, you know, but I don't shop at Target for that reason. And the boycotts of things, I know Ben & Jerry's makes great ice cream. They also are very liberal and have been donating money to causes that affect guns. And I don't want to get this show beyond the gun issue, but given that information about Progressive Insurance, you may want to consider another company. That's entirely up to you. Everybody shops on price, but occasionally it's smarter to shop on something other than price. Except a guy I had in here a week ago who I'll never forget. He came in and asked for a particular pistol, and I quoted a price on it, and he said, wow, you know, they're like $12 cheaper if I drive over to XYZ, but I love your show, and I love, you know, coming in here. I took my CCW here, but it's $12, you know, so I'm going to go over there. And I went, thank you.
Of course, he burned $12 worth of gasoline to get there. Or
well, but, you know, he didn't realize what he was really saying. I mean, that just makes no sense to me. Whatever. We'll support you, Bob, as long as it's free. That's cool. I'm down with that. But the people to people, and maybe the $12 made that much difference to him. You know, that's fine. It did the free class he liked, so that was okay. Anyway, we do have the concealed weapon classes are free. If you want to come by or look on our website to sign that up. And as I said, we've got a ladies self-defense class coming up next week. I would tell you to call your congressman and talk about the bans and stuff that are going through, but the guys that are on the Republican side here are going to vote against it, and the guys that are Democrats are going to vote for it. You know, it's nice to say, you know, call Harry Reid and ask him to allow you to have an assault rifle. He ain't going to do that. So there's no point, you know.
I
spend $1 and send it to the NRA, yeah, and they'll use it to get somebody else who's on the fence.
You're better off if you see someone who's acting strange, if you see someone that it's a neighbor. The guy that was one of the guys was a neighbor to the San Bernardino shooters, said he thought they were getting a lot of packages and it was strange that they were doing what they were doing, but he didn't want to call and report it because they were Muslim and he thought he might be branded a racist. Folks, if you think somebody is doing something that's sketchy, call the police. Let them investigate.
Yeah, the police could be the racists.
Yeah. Hey,
the left-wing press. They are.
You know, let them investigate it. That's what law enforcement does. And that's those things that when you call up are called leads, and they do wonderful things with leads. But if they don't know, then they're just doing nothing. They're not doing anything proactive. It's going along and doing reactive. So if you see something, please, God, say something. And don't give up the fight.
Don't quit. You got to win. And we need to beat the terrorists. And if there's something like that going on that you can help prevent, call and get out of the way. I thank you for listening. Lenny, thank you again. We'll be back next week with the attorney Clark Patrick. And hopefully we'll have some better news on the gun stuff that's going on in Congress right this moment. It's going to be tight, folks. We may be in real trouble here because of one guy who's dead. They're going to take your gun. If that makes perfect sense to you, you're watching the wrong show. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week.